My name is Olivia, and I don't usually yell in public, but that day at the pool, I lost it. I said, "You don't get to tell my son where he can and can't swim." I shouted, stepping between her and my little boy. "He has just as much right to be here as your brat does." "Your son is scaring the other children," the woman barked back, arms crossed, sunglasses perched high like a shield of superiority. "He's flapping and making noises. This isn't a zoo, lady." I could feel every pair of eyes around the pool turn to us, lifeguards frozen, parents whispering, kids gawking. My son, Jacob, just 8 years old, stood quietly behind me, hands flapping gently like he always did when he was excited. He wasn't hurting anyone. He wasn't even near the other kids. He just wanted to float in the shallow end, like he did every Saturday. "His name is Jacob," I hissed, "and he has autism. That doesn't make him a threat. It makes him different." She rolled her eyes like that was the worst thing in the world. "I don't care what his issue is. I pay a lot of money to live in this neighborhood. My kids shouldn't have to be uncomfortable every time they come to the pool." "Oh, so your comfort matters more than his humanity?" I snapped. "Is that it? Are you the HOA president or just the queen of discrimination today?" She stepped closer, eyes cold and sharp. "I am on the HOA board. And if you keep bringing your special needs case around here, I'll make sure he's banned." It felt like all the air had been punched out of my lungs. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the type, entitled, bitter, and too proud of a title that meant nothing outside her gated little bubble. The kind of woman who smiled at bake sales but roared when the world didn't bend to her picture-perfect expectations. But I wasn't going to let her humiliate my son. "He's not going anywhere," I said, trembling but firm. "If you think I'm going to let you bully my child because he makes you uncomfortable, you picked the wrong mom to mess with." That's when she crossed the line. "Oh please," she sneered. "If he's that much of a problem, maybe you should keep him locked inside where he belongs." I don't know if I gasped or growled. My hands were shaking. Jacob had sat down by now, gently pushing a toy boat across the concrete, completely unaware of the venom being hurled his way. And thank God for that. "You know what?" I said, my voice cracking from the fury rising in my chest. "You want to throw us out? Go ahead and try. But you better be ready for a lawsuit, because I will take you to court. And I promise you, I will win." She scoffed. "Yeah, good luck with that. No judge is going to side with a single mom and her," she paused, eyes flicking toward Jacob like he was something dirty, situation. I turned to the lifeguard, who'd been frozen this whole time like he was watching a tennis match between fire and ice. "Well?" I snapped. "Are you going to say something, or are you just here to blow the whistle when a toddler pees?" He blinked. "Ma'am, I don't want any trouble." "Too late," I said. "There's already trouble. And it's standing right over there trying to ban a disabled child from a public access community pool." That shut him up. He looked away. The woman smirked like she'd just won round one. But I wasn't done. I crouched next to Jacob and whispered, "Come on, baby. Let's go get some ice cream." Then I stood, stared the woman dead in the eyes, and added, "This isn't over." As we walked away, her voice followed us like the hiss of a snake. "You'll be hearing from the board." "Oh," I said over my shoulder, "you'll be hearing from my lawyer." And just like that, it had begun. The war I never asked for, but would finish. Because you can insult me. You can judge my parenting. You can whisper behind my back all you want. But when you come for my son, when you try to rob him of the tiny joys he works so hard to enjoy, you've made yourself my enemy. And I don't lose fights for people I love. Not ever. We got home that evening, and Jacob didn't say a word. He just held onto his toy boat and curled up on the couch like he always did when the world felt too loud. I sat across from him at the dining table, pretending to scroll through my phone, but really, I was shaking inside. Angry. Ashamed. Powerless. And that's the worst part, not what she said, but how I didn't see it coming. How I let someone talk to me like I was less. Like he was less. My son wasn't a problem. He was my entire world. The next morning, I heard the familiar thud of the HOA newsletter against the front door. But this time, something else slid under it, a white envelope, official-looking, sealed tight. I picked it up, heart pounding, and ripped it open. Dear Ms. Olivia Carson. After receiving multiple complaints from residents, the HOA board is issuing a formal warning regarding your son's behavior at the community pool. As per guidelines, disruptive behavior, including loud vocalizations, erratic movement, or actions that cause distress to others, is grounds for review. Continued violations may result in temporary suspension of pool privileges. Respectfully, the Lakeside Grove HOA Board. I stared at the paper for a long time. My hands were trembling again, but this time it wasn't rage, it was disbelief. They really did it. They called my child disruptive. They used coded words like erratic and distress, trying to make it sound polite. Professional. But I knew exactly what it was. They were banning my son for being autistic. Not aggressive. Not dangerous. Not loud or violent or any of the things they tried to imply. Just different. And they couldn't handle it. I looked over at Jacob, who was now humming quietly in the corner, tapping 2 building blocks together, completely at peace in his own little world. I wasn't going to let them take that away from him. No. I folded the letter neatly, took a deep breath, and picked up my phone. Hello, Denise? It's Olivia. Yeah. You still practice special needs advocacy law, right? No, I'm not okay. Listen, I've got something I need you to see. By the following Thursday, I was sitting across from a long oak desk stacked with files and binders. Denise, an old college friend turned attorney, had already read through the letter 3 times. This, she said, tapping it with her pen, is illegal. And I mean textbook discrimination. I can have a response letter on their desk in 48 hours. I exhaled, finally letting my shoulders drop. Do you think we have a case? She looked me dead in the eyes. Olivia, you have a slam-dunk case. I smiled for the first time in days. You're not just defending your son, she continued. You're about to put that entire HOA on blast. And I hope you're ready, because if they want a fight, they're going to get one. 2 days later, I hand-delivered the response letter myself. Marched right up to the HOA office, still wearing my work uniform from the diner, and slid it across their desk with the confidence of a woman who was done being quiet. Ms. Olivia, we didn't expect. You should have, I said flatly. I told your board chair what would happen. Now it's official. The clerk opened the letter, eyes darting across Denise's legal header. Her face dropped. And just so we're clear, I added, this isn't about the pool anymore. This is about every child like mine who's been quietly pushed out, ignored, or made to feel like they don't belong here. It ends now. She didn't say a word. And I walked out without looking back. By the time the first hearing was scheduled, word had already spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Some people were silent. Some offered stiff smiles. But a few mothers pulled me aside at school drop-off. Thank you, one whispered. My daughter has Tourette's. We've been scared to take her anywhere public. Another nodded with tears in her eyes. They shut down my son's lemonade stand last year. Said it was unsanitary because he has Down syndrome. I realized then, I wasn't just fighting for Jacob anymore. I was fighting for all of us. She strutted into the courtroom like she was walking into a spa. White blazer, pearls, sunglasses on her head like she owned the place. Charlene Matthews. The woman who yelled at my son in front of strangers. The same one who claimed her daughter had been traumatized just because Jacob flapped his hands near the pool. She didn't look nervous. She looked smug. Confident. Like she was still in control of the narrative. Until she saw me sitting across from her. Not crying. Not shaking. But calm. Focused. And not alone. Denise was right beside me. Her briefcase open, files in perfect order. My hands were folded neatly in my lap, but my heart was pounding in my chest. Not from fear, but from something else. Righteous anger. The judge, a woman in her late 50s, took her seat. The gavel came down with a soft but firm thunk. Court is now in session. Charlene's lawyer launched first, all polished smiles and legal jargon. He used words like community standards, reasonable expectation of behavior, emotional distress, public safety. He kept referring to Jacob as the child in question. Like he was an exhibit. Not a little boy. And I sat there, listening to lie after lie, biting the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. Then it was Denise's turn. She stood up, calm and commanding. Your Honor, what happened here isn't just exclusion, it's discrimination. Plain and simple. And we're not just here because of a misunderstanding. We're here because of a pattern. A system. A neighborhood that treats difference as danger. She turned to me and gave the slightest nod. It was time. I stood slowly. Walked to the front. And looked at the woman who had called my son a public nuisance. Then I spoke. My name is Olivia Carson. I live in Lakeside Grove with my 8-year-old son, Jacob. He was diagnosed with autism when he was 3. He's nonverbal. But he's brilliant. He builds entire cities out of Legos. He sings in perfect pitch. And yes, he flaps his hands when he's excited. Because he feels joy in a way most of us have forgotten. I turned to the judge. On the day in question, my son was not dangerous. He wasn't even disruptive. He was happy. Splashing in the shallow end with his toy boat. Laughing. Until a grown woman, a stranger, screamed in his face and told him he wasn't welcome. Charlene shifted in her seat. And now they want to ban him, I continued. Not because he broke a rule. Not because he hurt anyone. But because he made someone uncomfortable. Because he was different. And if that's what this community stands for, then it's not a community, it's a club. A club that only lets in people who act a certain way, look a certain way, talk a certain way. I paused. Let the silence settle. Jacob can't speak for himself. But I can. And I won't let him be silenced. Not now. Not ever. The room was still. You could hear every breath. Then the judge leaned forward. Mrs. Matthews, she said, addressing Charlene, would you like to make a statement? Charlene stood, slowly, reluctantly. With all due respect, Your Honor, she said with a forced smile, this has been blown completely out of proportion. My daughter was genuinely frightened. That boy, her son, was behaving erratically. I was only protecting my child. You screamed at an 8-year-old, Denise cut in, and then lobbied to have him banned. That's not protection. That's bullying. Charlene flushed. I did what any good mother would do. I spoke up. No, I said, louder this time. You didn't speak up. You targeted. And that's when something happened I'll never forget. From the back of the courtroom a man stood up. My name is Marcus Lee, he said, voice steady. My son has sensory processing disorder. We were at that same pool 2 weeks earlier. Charlene told us we didn't belong either. Gasps filled the courtroom. Another woman rose. My daughter has epilepsy. Charlene tried to get her banned from the 4th of July picnic. Said the strobe lights were more important than accommodating freaks. The judge raised her hand, calling for order. But the message was clear. Charlene wasn't afraid. She was intolerant. And she'd been doing this for years. The judge looked over her glasses at the HOA board rep, a tight-lipped man who hadn't spoken once. You received complaints. Did you verify any of them? Speak to the family? Gather evidence? He shifted uncomfortably. We acted on multiple reports. From whom? The judge pressed. Primarily from Mrs. Matthews. Only her? He nodded slowly. The judge leaned back. Case dismissed. The letter from the HOA is null and void. Furthermore, I'm referring this case for a formal investigation of discriminatory practices. And if I find evidence of civil rights violations? We'll see you all back here very soon. Charlene's mouth fell open. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just sat down. Looked at Denise. And exhaled. It was over. Or maybe, it was just beginning. I thought the courtroom would be the hardest part. But I was wrong. Because the moment the judge's gavel fell and Charlene was publicly embarrassed, the war didn't end. It just moved outside. The next morning, I opened my front door to find Jacob's toys scattered across the yard. His floaties were gone from the porch. Just missing. His bike tires had been let out. Not slashed, that would have been too obvious. Just quietly flattened. No note. No voice. Just silence. But silence says enough. That same morning, the HOA sent out a community unity email. No apology. No mention of the ruling. Just a vague note about tensions and a reminder to treat each other with respect. I stared at the screen and laughed. Out loud. It was like getting kicked in the ribs and being told to apologize for how hard your body landed. Jacob didn't understand. Not fully. But he sensed it. He always does. He knew we weren't going to the pool anymore. He'd bring me his goggles every morning. His small way of asking, and I'd have to distract him, redirect him. Pretend everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. Until one evening, something changed. It started small. There was a knock on the door, and when I opened it, Mrs. Navarro stood there. She's in her 70s. Quiet. Keeps to herself. I figured she'd sided with Charlene. She was on the same garden club mailing list, always at the bake sales. But that night, she looked at me with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry, she said softly. I should have said something sooner. What Charlene did was cruel. And cowardly. My grandson's autistic too. He lives out of state, but, if someone ever treated him like that. She trailed off, reached into her tote bag, and handed me something. It was a floa tie. Bright red. A new one. I figured your son might need a replacement. I cried. Right there in the doorway. The next day, it spread. I saw chalk drawings on the sidewalk. Bright colors, dinosaurs, rocket ships, Jacob's favorites. A neighbor kid waved shyly from her porch. I didn't even know her name. Then Marcus, the dad from the courtroom, showed up with his son. Pool day? He asked. I hesitated. You sure? He nodded. It's not about them anymore. So we went. All of us. Me. Jacob. Marcus and his boy. A few more families trickled in. Parents of kids with ADHD, sensory issues, learning differences. People who'd been quiet for too long. We didn't ask permission. We didn't need a vote. We just showed up. Jacob dipped his toes into the water and lit up. He flapped his hands, let out a joyful squeal, and for the first time, nobody turned around. Nobody stared. A couple of kids even joined in. For an hour, we felt normal. Then she arrived. Charlene. Still wearing white. Still with her sunglasses perched like a crown. She stopped at the gate. Stared across the pool deck. And what she saw must have infuriated her. Not just me. But others. Smiling. Splashing. Ignoring her. She didn't scream. She didn't call the cops. She just stood there. powerless. Because this wasn't her space anymore. It belonged to all of us now. That summer changed everything. Not just for Jacob. Not just for me. But for our entire neighborhood. The pool became a symbol, not of luxury, not of status, but of belonging. Kids of every background, every ability, started showing up. Some didn't speak much. Some flapped or spun in circles. Some got overwhelmed and needed space. And for once, that was okay. We started calling it the quiet hour, just one block of time every weekend where the pool stayed calm, sensory-friendly, and inclusive. Not because a policy forced us to, but because people chose to care. Even some of the old skeptics started showing up again. Slowly. Cautiously. And one day, Charlene walked past me at the mailbox. She didn't say anything. But she looked smaller somehow. Not physically, just reduced. Like someone who'd lost the one thing she used to keep her world spinning, control. I didn't need revenge. The court had spoken. The community had spoken. And Jacob? He didn't hold grudges. He just wanted to swim. A few months later, he made his first friend. Really made one. A boy named Ezra who had a speech delay and loved dinosaurs just as much as Jacob did. The two of them would sit for hours trading toy figurines, making up roars and stories with no real words, but so much joy. That, to me, was the real victory. Not the legal win. Not the headlines. Not even the apologies whispered too late. But that friendship. That future. Because people like Charlene think silence is weakness. They think if you don't shout back, you're surrendering. But I've learned something else. Sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. It's knowing when to fight, and when to let the truth speak louder than any scream. So if you're watching this, and you're a parent, or a teacher, or just someone who's ever rolled your eyes at that weird kid in the store, at the park, in your class, I hope you remember my son's story. Because there are thousands like him. Smart. Kind. Overwhelmed. Trying their best in a world that often refuses to meet them halfway. They don't need your pity. They don't need your tolerance. They need your respect. Your inclusion. Your voice, when they can't raise theirs. Charlene tried to silence mine. But in doing so, she woke something bigger. A mother's will. A child's courage. And a community that remembered what it means to care. So no, I didn't just take her to court. I took back our place in the world. And I'd do it again. For Jacob. For every child who just wants to swim. And for every parent who refuses to stay silent ever again.